Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to Mysteries Unveiled, the podcast where we dive into the darkest corners of classic whodunits, reimagined with fresh twists and timeless intrigue. I'm your host, Alex Thornwood, and whether you're a long-time fan of detective tales or just stumbling upon us during a late-night scroll, we're thrilled to have you here. If this is your first time tuning in, get ready for a journey into the mind of the legendary Hercule Poirot as we unravel a brand new original story inspired by the genius of Agatha Christie. If you love suspense, please subscribe now for more episodes and bonus content. It's free and keeps the mysteries coming. Let's unravel the mystery, and let's dim the lights and step into the fog. Here are 5 chapters of murder by the Sinister Killer and Hercule Poirot. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The Shadow in the Moonlit Manor. The moon hung low over Eldridge Manor like a tarnished silver medallion, casting elongated shadows that twisted across the ivy-choked stone facade. The estate sprawled across the misty English countryside, its turrets piercing the night sky as if defying the encroaching darkness. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of aged oak and flickering beeswax candles, their flames dancing uneasily in crystal sconces. Lord Reginald Harrington, the manor's imperious master, paced the grand library, his polished boots clicking against the parquet floor like the ticking of an inexorable clock. He was a figure of faded grandeur, his once sharp features softened by years of indulgence, fine wines from forgotten cellars, cigars smuggled from Havana, and secrets buried deeper than the roots of the ancient yew trees outside. Tonight, though, his brow furrowed with an unfamiliar unease. A letter had arrived that afternoon, its envelope unmarked save for a wax seal imprinted with a thorny rose. The words within were terse, venomous. Your sins bloom in the dark. Tonight they wither. He crumpled it in his fist, dismissing it as a prank from a disgruntled servant or a rival from his club in London. But as the grandfather clock struck midnight, a chill seeped through the room, unbidden and unrelenting. Upstairs, in the labyrinthine corridors lined with portraits of stern ancestors, the guests stirred in their opulent chambers. Lady Evelyn Harrington, Reginald's wife of 20 years, reclined in her boudoir, her silk negligee whispering against the velvet chaise. Her eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, darted to the door now and then, as if expecting an intruder. She had married for status, not love, and the manor had become her gilded cage. Across the hall, their nephew, Victor Langford, lounged with a tumbler of scotch, his lanky frame sprawled across an armchair. A gambler by nature, Victor's fortunes rose and fell like the tides, and tonight he pondered a risky investment that could either secure his inheritance or shatter it. His sister, Amelia, the enigmatic niece with a passion for botany, tended to her private greenhouse adjoining her room, her fingers deftly pruning night-blooming jasmine under the moonlight filtering through glass panes. The butler, Mr. Thorne, a stoic sentinel with a scar tracing his jawline, patrolled the lower floors, his keys jingling like a warden's chain. No one heard the soft creak of a floorboard in the east wing, nor the faint rustle of fabric slipping through shadows. The sinister killer moved like smoke, elusive, insidious, a phantom born from whispers in the criminal underbelly of Europe, known only by the trail of high society victims left in their wake, each marked by a single black rose, thorned and pristine. The killer's motives were as opaque as midnight fog, but their precision was legendary, strike swift, silent, and surgical. It began with a gasp, muffled at first, then erupting into a blood-curdling scream that shattered the manor's fragile peace. Lady Evelyn bolted upright, her heart pounding like a trapped bird. Victor spilled his scotch, the amber liquid staining the Persian rug. Amelia's pruning shears clattered to the floor, slicing a petal in two. Thorn froze mid-step, his face paling beneath his impeccably groomed moustache. They converged on the library, drawn by the echo of terror. Thorn arrived first, wrenching open the heavy oak doors. There, slumped over his mahogany desk, amid scattered papers and an overturned inkwell, lay Lord Harrington. His throat was a crimson ruin slashed with the precision of a master surgeon or a vengeful artist. Blood pooled on the blotter, seeping into the fibers like spilled wine on linen. And there, placed with mocking delicacy beside his lifeless hand, a single black rose, its petals unfurled in silent accusation. Chaos erupted. Lady Evelyn collapsed against the doorframe, her scream a raw, piercing wail that seemed to summon the wind outside. Victor stared, his face ashen, muttering curses under his breath. Amelia hovered at the threshold, her eyes wide with a mix of horror and fascination, as if dissecting a rare specimen. Thorn, ever the professional, barked orders to the awakening staff, a maid who fainted on the spot, a footman who rushed for brandy. Word spread like wildfire through the village below, but it was Lady Evelyn who, in her grief-stricken haze, insisted on summoning the one man who could pierce this veil of dread, Hercule Poirot. A telegram was dispatched by the trembling telegraph boy, racing through the fog-shrouded lanes to London. Murder at Eldridge. Sinister Killer strikes. Come at once. Evelyn Harrington. Dawn was still hours away when Poirot received the missive. The Belgian detective, ensconced in his meticulously ordered apartment on Whitehaven Mansions, sipped his tisane, his iconic moustache twitching with intrigue. Retirement had beckoned, but cases like this, riddled with elegance and enigma, stirred his little grey cells like nothing else. He donned his overcoat, its fabric as impeccable as his logic, and hailed a cab to the station. The train rattled through the pre-dawn gloom, fields blurring into a monochrome tapestry, while Poirot pondered the name, Sinister Killer. Whispers from Interpol files danced in his mind, victims of nobility, each death a tableau of precision, each rose a signature of scorn. By mid-morning, as the sun struggled to burn away the mist, Poirot's carriage crunched up the gravel drive. The manor loomed, its windows like watchful eyes. Lady Evelyn greeted him at the door, her face a mask of pallid composure cracked by red-rimmed eyes. "Monsieur Poirot, thank God you've come. It's unimaginable." "Madame," Poirot replied, his voice a soothing cadence with a hint of steel. "The unimaginable is often the most revealing. Lead me to the scene, if you please." The library remained untouched, preserved by Thorn's foresight. Poirot entered, his patent leather shoes silent on the threshold. The air hung heavy with the metallic tang of blood and the faint, cloying sweetness of the rose. He circled the desk like a predator assessing prey, his eyes sharp, unblinking, cataloguing every detail, the slash, clean, from left to right, suggesting a right-handed assailant of similar height. The papers, financial ledgers, some smeared with ink, hinting at a disturbance mid-review. The rose, fresh, dew-kissed, not from the manor's gardens. Amelia confirmed that later, her voice trembling as she described her own blooms. Interviews commenced in the drawing room, a chamber of velvet drapes and gilded mirrors that reflected the suspect's unease like distorted echoes. First, Lady Evelyn, seated with a handkerchief clutched in her lap. Reginald had enemies, yes, business rivals, old flames, but this Rose. I've heard tales of the Sinister Killer in the papers, a ghost who preys on the elite. Poirot nodded, his fingers steepled. And your own whereabouts, madame? Last night, in my room, alone. I retired early with a headache. Her gaze flickered to the window, where fog lingered like unspoken lies. Victor followed, slouching into the chair with feigned nonchalance. Uncle was a tyrant, always meddling in my affairs. But kill him, I'd sooner bet on a lame horse. His alibi, drinking in his suite, corroborated by an empty bottle, though Poirot noted the fresh tremor in his hands, nerves or guilt. Amelia entered with poise, her dark hair coiled like a serpent. I was in the greenhouse. Plants don't lie, Monsieur Poirot, unlike people. She spoke of her uncle's disdain for her unladylike pursuits, but her eyes held a spark of something deeper, resentment, perhaps, or relief. Thorn, last, stood ramrod straight. I was securing the door, sir, heard nothing until the scream. His scar gleamed under the light, a relic of some unspoken war. As the sun climbed higher, dissipating the mist, Poirot returned to the library alone. His methodical search yielded a peculiarity, a bookshelf that whispered when pressed, a hidden latch. With a soft click, it swung open, revealing a narrow passage cloaked in dust and cobwebs leading toward the servants' quarters. Footprints marred the grime, fresh, deliberate, an insider's path, betraying the manor's sanctity. Mes amis, Poirot announced to the assembled group in the hall, his voice cutting through the murmurs. The killer walks among us. No one leaves until the truth blooms. The manor was locked down, guards posted at every door. Whispers of suspicion rippled through the air, but as dawn's full light bathed the grounds in gold, a tentative calm settled. The immediate terror ebbed, replaced by watchful anticipation. Yet Poirot knew the sinister killer's shadow lingered, coiled and waiting, in the heart of Eldridge Manor. Chapter 2. Whispers of deception among the heirs. The morning after the lockdown dawned crisp and unforgiving, sunlight slicing through the manor's leaded windows like accusatory blades. Eldridge Manor, once a bastion of aristocratic splendor, now pulsed with a subdued paranoia. Servants tiptoed through the halls, their whispers slithering like vines up the wall-papered walls. Hercule Poirot, ever the epitome of composure, had commandeered the sunlit conservatory as his makeshift headquarters. Glass panes arched overhead, enclosing a jungle of potted ferns and exotic orchids that Amelia had cultivated with obsessive care. The air hummed with the faint buzz of trapped bees, mirroring the tension among the inhabitants. Poirot adjusted his pince-nez, his small, egg-shaped head tilting as he reviewed his notes on a leather-bound ledger. The hidden passage from the library had been sealed with heavy chains, but its discovery gnawed at him, a vein of treachery running through the manor's very bones. The killer, he murmured to himself, does not strike blindly. No, this is a dance of shadows, where every step reveals a partner in deceit. His first summon was Victor Langford, the nephew whose lanky frame now seemed coiled with barely contained energy. Victor entered the conservatory with a swagger that faltered under Poirot's piercing gaze, slumping into a wicker chair that creaked in protest. Beads of sweat glistened on his forehead despite the cool air. Monsieur Langford, Poirot began, his voice a velvet trap. You spoke last night of your uncle as a tyrant. Elaborate, if you please. What meddling drove such resentment? Victor lit a cigarette with trembling fingers, the flame flickering like his resolve. Uncle Reginald treated the family fortune like his personal kingdom. He cut my allowance last month, said my speculations were draining the estate. Speculations, as if his own ventures in those shady mining companies were any better. He exhaled a plume of smoke that curled toward the glass ceiling. But murder! I'd have sooner challenged him to a duel at dawn than skulk in the dark. Poirot's moustache quivered. Ah, but duels require honor, non? And honor, it seems, is in short supply here. Your alibi, the empty Scotch bottle, convenient yet verifiable by no one. Tell me of your relations with the others. Your sister, Amelia, does she share your grievances? Victor's eyes narrowed, a flash of something feral crossing his features. Amelia. She's always been the golden child, buried in her plants while I scrape by. But lately, she's been secretive. Whispers in the greenhouse with that botanist fellow from the village. If anyone's brewing poison, it's her. The interview ended with Victor storming out, leaving behind the acrid scent of tobacco and unspoken accusations. Poirot jotted a note. Motives multiply like weeds. Next came Amelia, gliding in like a spectre from a Gothic tale, a dress of deep emerald rustling against the flagstones. She carried a small vial of amber liquid, essence of jasmine, she claimed, to calm her nerves. Her dark eyes met Poirot's with a defiance that bordered on challenge. Mademoiselle Harrington, Poirot said, gesturing to the seat, your greenhouse is a marvel, but marvels often hide dangers, poisons perhaps. Your uncle disapproved of your pursuits. Amelia's lips curved into a wry smile as she uncorked the vial, letting a floral aroma waft through the room. Disapproved. He loathed them, called my studies witchcraft for spinsters. But plants are honest, Monsieur Poirot. They thrive or wither based on truth, soil, light, care. Unlike humans, who poison with words. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial hush. Victor thinks he's clever, gambling away what little we have. And Aunt Evelyn, she's not as fragile as she seems. Late-night meetings with Thorne, you know, the butler sees everything. Poirot's eyes sparkled. Ah, the butler, a classic figure in such dramas. And you, what secrets do your blooms conceal? She hesitated, then confessed. I argued with Uncle last week. He threatened to sell the greenhouse to fund Victor's debts, but I didn't kill him. My hands cultivate life, not death. As Amelia departed, Poirot pondered her words, the jasmine lingering like a veiled threat. The web tightened. The afternoon brought a storm, literal and metaphorical. Thunder rumbled across the countryside as Poirot requested Thorne's presence. The butler arrived impeccably attired, his scar a stark line against his sallow skin, carrying a silver tray with tea service, as if normalcy could ward off suspicion. Mr. Thorne, Poirot intoned, accepting a cup of Earl Grey. You are the eyes and ears of this manor. What have they witnessed? Thorne poured with steady hands, but his voice betrayed a faint tremor. Loyalty, sir, is my creed. Lord Harrington was a demanding master, but fair. Debts, feuds, I've seen them all. Master Victor's creditors hounding the gates, Miss Amelia's midnight forays into the woods for rare specimens, and Lady Evelyn. He paused, glancing toward the door. Continue, Poirot urged, sipping the tea that steamed like rising doubts. She and the Lord quarreled often, about indiscretions, his mostly, but hers. Whispers of an old flame reignited. I overheard her on the telephone 2 nights ago, arranging a clandestine meeting. Poirot set down his cup with a clink. And your own alibi. Securing doors, you said. Yet the hidden passage, known to you, surely. Thorn's composure cracked, his scar twitching. Known, yes, from my days as a soldier, mapping escapes. But I swear I was in the pantry, inventorying silver. The interrogation stretched, revelations piling like storm clouds. Family feuds emerged, Reginald's favoritism toward Amelia, cutting Victor from the will. Illicit affairs, including Evelyn's rumoured liaison with a London solicitor. Thorn's own grudge over unpaid wages from wartime service to the family. As evening approached, the storm broke, rain lashing the windows like furious accusations. Poirot, sensing the need for escalation, gathered the heirs in the library, the very room of the crime, now cleansed but echoing with ghosts. The group assembled uneasily, Victor pacing, Amelia fingering a leaf from her pocket, Thorn standing sentinel, Evelyn draped in mourning black. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot announced, his presence commanding the space. Deception whispers in these walls, but whispers can be amplified. At that moment, a gasp from Amelia. On the desk, where Reginald had died, lay another black rose, fresh, thorns glinting under the chandelier's light. Tucked beneath it, a note in elegant script. The petals fall one by one. Who wilt's next, little detective? Panic surged. Victor swore, knocking over a lamp. Evelyn clutched her pearls. Thorn moved to secure the doors. Poirot, unflappable, examined the rose. Imported, rare, nightshade variant, not from your greenhouse, mademoiselle. Amelia shook her head, pale. No, but close enough to implicate me. The note's ink was fresh, the paper from the Manor's own stationery. The killer toys with us, Poirot declared, but games reveal players. He pivoted to the will, a document Thorn produced from the safe. Poirot's keen eye spotted irregularities, the signature slightly off, ink inconsistencies under a magnifying glass borrowed from Amelia's botanical kit. Forged, he exclaimed. The original favored Victor equally, but this version cuts him out entirely, benefiting Lady Evelyn and Amelia. Evelyn protested, tears streaming. I knew nothing. Reginald changed it himself. But Poirot dismantled the lie with precision. Cross-referencing dates with Thorn's logs, he revealed Evelyn's solicitor visit coincided with the forgery. You sought to secure your future, madame, amid rumours of divorce. But the forger, not you, too clumsy. Monsieur Thorn, your military training included document replication. None. Thorn stiffened, then deflated. For her ladyship's sake, the Lord was cruel, planning to disinherit all but his clubs. The exposure exonerated Victor from the forgery, his outrage genuine but cast darker shadows on Evelyn and Thorn's alliance and Amelia's potential complicity in the knowledge. Accusations flew like lightning, but Poirot quelled them. Enough! The killer thrives on division. We watch each other now. As night fell, the storm abated to a drizzle, mirroring the fragile truce. Guards patrolled, doors bolted anew. The group dispersed to their rooms, eyes darting with newfound wariness. Poirot retired to the conservatory, the orchid swaying gently, but his mind raced. The sinister killer's taunt echoed, a promise of more petals to fall, the Manor's secrets unfurling like deadly blooms in the dark. Chapter 3. The labyrinth of lies and alibis, the second night under lockdown, wrapped Eldridge Manor in a shroud of uneasy silence, broken only by the distant hoot of an owl and the creak of settling timbers. Hercule Poirot, having spent the twilight hours in solitary contemplation amid the conservatory's verdant embrace, emerged with a plan as intricate as the Manor's winding corridors. His little grey cells had woven a tapestry from the threads of forgery, resentment, and that insidious second rose, each petal a clue pointing to a killer who delighted in psychological torment. Now it was time to unravel it through action. As the clock in the great hall chimed 8, Poirot assembled the suspects in the cavernous dining room, where crystal goblets caught the candlelight like captured stars. The long oak table, usually laden with feasts, now bore only notepads and a sketched map of the manor, drawn by Poirot's own hand. Victor slouched at one end, his fingers drumming an erratic rhythm. Amelia perched opposite, her posture rigid as a thorn stem. Lady Evelyn toyed with a lace handkerchief, her eyes shadowed by veiled grief, and Thorn stood at attention, his uniform a bastion against the encroaching chaos. "Mesdames et messieurs," Poirot declared, his voice resonating with quiet authority. "Lies are like these corridors, twisted, deceptive, leading to dead ends. Tonight, we navigate them together. We shall reconstruct the night of the murder, step by shadowed step. Each of you will reenact your movements precisely as you claim. Deviations will illuminate truths hidden in the gloom." Murmurs rippled through the group, but Poirot's gaze quelled them like a maestro silencing an orchestra. He assigned roles with precision. Thorn to guide the timing, starting from the stroke of 11, the hour before the scream. Candles were distributed, their flames flickering to mimic the dim illumination of that fateful evening, casting elongated silhouettes that danced across tapestries depicting ancient hunts. The reconstruction began in earnest. Victor, grumbling under his breath, retreated to his suite upstairs, slamming the door with theatrical flair to simulate his alleged solitary drinking. Amelia slipped into the greenhouse annex, her lantern bobbing like a will-o'-the-wisp as she pretended to tend her nocturnal blooms. Lady Evelyn ascended to her boudoir, her footsteps echoing faintly on the marble stairs, while Thorn patrolled the lower halls, his keys clinking in rhythmic cadence. Poirot positioned himself in the library's antechamber, stopwatch in hand, his eyes darting like a hawk's. "Commence!" he called, and the manor came alive with orchestrated motion. He followed Victor first, slipping into the nephew's room unannounced. The air reeked of stale scotch, but Poirot's keen nose detected something else, a faint whiff of earth, as if from garden soil tracked in unnoticed. Victor feigned surprise, spilling a prop glass. "See, alone as a monk," he snarled. But as Poirot withdrew, his foot brushed against a misplaced glove, leather, supple, embroidered with a subtle crest not matching any in the household. He pocketed it discreetly, his mind whirring. Down the hall, Amelia's greenhouse glowed with ethereal light. She clipped at imaginary vines, but Poirot noted her glance toward the woods beyond the glass, a path leading to the estate's perimeter. "Your focus wanders, mademoiselle," he observed. "To what or whom?" Amelia flushed. "The night air inspires, nothing more." The corridors twisted like a serpent's coils as Poirot descended, candles guttering in draughts that whispered of unseen passages. In the servants' quarters, Thorn demonstrated his rounds, locking doors with mechanical efficiency. Yet, when they reached the kitchen, Poirot paused. A subtle scent lingered, rare perfume, exotic and heady, like crushed lilies from distant shores. It didn't belong to the utilitarian space of pots and pans. "This aroma," Poirot mused aloud. "It clings like a memory. From whom does it emanate?" Thorn shrugged, but his scar tightened imperceptibly. "Perhaps her ladyship's maid, sir. She favours such frivolities." The reenactment escalated, As the clock neared midnight, Poirot orchestrated a convergence in the central atrium, where staircases spiraled like DNA strands. Accusations began to fly, Victor claiming he heard footsteps outside his door, contradicting Thorne's patrol, Amelia insisting a shadow flitted past her greenhouse window, Evelyn descending dramatically, swearing solitude until the scream. "Enough pretense," Victor exploded, his face reddening. "This is a farce. Amelia, you were out there. Admit it." "Liar," she retorted, her voice a whip crack. "You're the one with debts piling like autumn leaves. Uncle's blood is on your hands." Alliances fractured visibly, Evelyn siding with Thorne in defense, their glances laced with shared secrets. Poirot interjected, his presence a calming vortex. "Chaos serves the killer. Let us proceed to the library." As they filed in, tension coiled tighter than a spring. Poirot had prepared a decoy, a tea set on the desk, steaming with chamomile brewed by Thorne under supervision. "A simple refreshment," Poirot explained, "to steady nerves." He poured for himself first, lifting the cup to his lips, but hesitated, his nose twitching at an acrid undertone beneath the herbal notes. In a blur of motion, the sinister killer struck, not with blade, but subtlety. The tea frothed unnaturally, a bitter almond scent betraying cyanide. Poirot dashed the cup to the floor where it shattered, liquid hissing on the wood. "Poison!" he cried, whirling on the group. Evelyn gasped, hand to her throat. Victor backed away, eyes wide. Amelia froze, vial-like in her stillness. Thorne lunged forward, but too late. The peril electrified the room. Guards burst in, summoned by a prearranged signal, a bell cord Poirot had rigged. "No one moves," he commanded, his voice thunderous despite his diminutive stature. The air thrummed with heightened danger, hearts pounding in unison. Poirot's dismantling of alibis unfolded like a surgical dissection. He produced the glove, holding it aloft. "This, found in Monsieur Langford's room, yet it bears the monogram of Elias Crowe, the estate's gardener, and the soil. From the outer beds, not tracked by accident." Victor's denial crumbled under scrutiny. I met him briefly that night. He owed me from a card game, nothing more." But Poirot pressed on, revealing the perfume's origin, traced to a sample from Amelia's collection, yet worn by Evelyn during her headache retreat. "A rendezvous, madame. Not alone, but with a secret admirer." Evelyn's facade shattered. "It was innocent. A friend from London consoling me. He left before midnight through the side gate." The timeline shifted dramatically. Poirot cross-referenced clocks and testimonies. Victor's meeting with Crowe at 11:30, overlapping Evelyn's liaison. Amelia's shadow sighting aligning with Thorne's delayed patrol. Falsehoods entwine, Poirot intoned. The scream came at midnight, but movements blur like ink in water. The climax surged when Poirot summoned Elias Crowe from the outbuildings, a burly man with calloused hands and a guilty hunch. Under interrogation in the library's glow, Crowe confessed piecemeal, hired to forge documents, yes, but also to distract with noises during the murder hour. A voice in the dark promised gold, he muttered, avoiding eyes. "Plant the rose," they said, "create confusion." "Who?" Poirot demanded, his eyes boring like drills. Crowe shook his head, sweat beading. "Never saw. A note slipped under my door. Gambling debts, they knew everything." With irrefutable links, Crowe's glove, his earth-stained boots matching passage prints, Poirot ordered his arrest. Guards escorted the gardener away, his protests echoing down the halls like fading thunder. The immediate dread lifted, a collective exhale rippling through the group. Victor slumped in relief. Amelia's shoulders relaxed. Evelyn dabbed at tears. Thorne busied himself clearing shards. Yet, as the candles burned low, Poirot stood amid the debris, his expression grave. An accomplice falls, but the puppeteer pulls strings from the shadows. The labyrinth deepens, mes amis. Sleep, if you can, but with one eye open. The manor settled into a watchful hush, the night's revelations granting a momentary sanctuary. Outside, stars pierced the velvet sky, indifferent to the human drama below. But within, the sinister killer's essence lingered, a phantom breath on the nape of suspicion, drawing Poirot inexorably toward the heart of the enigma. Chapter 4. Echoes from the forgotten crypt, the third dawn at Eldridge Manor, broke with a deceptive serenity, golden rays filtering through the mullioned windows to gild the dust motes swirling in the air. Yet beneath this veneer of calm, the estate thrummed with an undercurrent of dread, like a violin string stretched to its breaking point. Hercule Poirot, having passed a restless night piecing together fragments of motive and opportunity, rose with renewed vigor. The arrest of Elias Crowe had peeled back a layer of the onion, revealing rot beneath, but the core, the sinister killer's identity, remained shrouded. Today, Poirot resolved. He would delve into the manor's subterranean secrets, where echoes of the past might whisper the truths of the present. He began in the shadowed bowels of the estate, descending a spiral staircase hidden behind a false panel in the butler's pantry. Thorne accompanied him reluctantly, lantern in hand, its beam cutting through the musty gloom like a reluctant confession. The air grew cooler, heavier, laced with the earthy tang of moss and forgotten stone. Cobwebs draped the walls like tattered veils, and the steps groaned underfoot, protesting the intrusion. "The crypt, Monsieur Thorne," Poirot said, his breath visible in the chill. "A repository, not just for the dead, but for the Harringtons' buried sins. Lead on." Thorne nodded grimly, his scar a pale slash in the flickering light. They emerged into a vaulted chamber, arches curving like ribs over sarcophagi etched with faded epitaphs. Dust blanketed the stone lids, undisturbed for generations, save for one corner where footprints, faint but recent, marred the grime. Poirot knelt, his gloved fingers tracing the impressions. "Not yours, I think. Someone sought solace here, or perhaps concealment." Methodically, he explored the niches, his keen eyes spotting anomalies, a loose flagstone, pried up and hastily replaced. Beneath it lay a weathered leather-bound diary, its pages yellowed and brittle, bound with a frayed ribbon. Poirot's heart quickened as he untied it, the entries scrawled in Reginald Harrington's youthful hand. Dates from the Great War leaped out, codes, rendezvous points, betrayals. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, scanning passages that unveiled a hidden life. Harrington had been no mere officer. He was entangled in a clandestine espionage ring, smuggling secrets across the channel for profit, not patriotism. One entry detailed a fateful night in 1917. A partner double-crossed, left for dead in a Flemish trench, his family ruined. The name Blackthorn recurred, a code name for the betrayed agent, whose vendetta, it seemed, had festered like an untreated wound, blooming into the sinister killer's thorny roses. "This," Poirot said, closing the diary with a snap that echoed through the crypt, "is the seed of our killer's rage. Lord Harrington's wartime greed sowed death decades later." Thorne's face paled. He never spoke of it, but whispers in the village, old soldiers' tales. Could this Blackthorn be among us? Poirot pocketed the diary. Or their descendant. The past claws at the present, monsieur. We must provoke it to reveal itself. Ascending with the relic in tow, Poirot orchestrated his next gambit, a séance in the manor's seldom-used parlour, a room steeped in Victorian melancholy with heavy brocade curtains and a round mahogany table scarred by time. He enlisted Amelia's botanical expertise to prepare incense, frankincense laced with subtle hallucinogens from her rarer herbs, enough to loosen tongues without true peril. Apparitions, he explained to her in confidence, staged with mirrors and wires, will stir the guilty conscience. As twilight descended, painting the sky in bruised purples, the suspects gathered around the table. Victor fidgeted with a silver lighter, igniting and extinguishing its flame. Amelia arranged crystal decanters of water, her fingers steady but her eyes darting. Lady Evelyn clutched a rosary, her knuckles white. Thorne positioned himself by the door, a silent guardian. Poirot, at the head, dimmed the gas lamps to a spectral glow. "We call upon the spirits," he intoned, his voice a hypnotic cadence, "to unveil the veils of deception. Join hands and let the echoes speak." The incense curled upward, its smoke weaving illusions in the air. Poirot's hidden mechanism sprang to life. A concealed projector cast shimmering figures, ethereal outlines of wartime soldiers dancing on the walls. Gasps filled the room as the apparitions moaned, pre-recorded whispers from a phonograph hidden beneath the floorboards, accusing in Reginald's mimicked voice, "Betrayal, the trench, Blackthorn's blood on my hands." Victor's lighter clattered to the table. "What sorcery is this?" Uncle's voice, "Impossible." Amelia's composure cracked. "The diary. You found it. Father spoke of a lost uncle, vanished in the war, but jealousy. I envied Reginald's control, yes, but not enough for murder." Evelyn's rosary snapped, beads scattering like fleeing secrets. "He confessed to me once in a drunken haze. The espionage, the riches it brought. I urged him to atone, but greed consumed him. If Blackthorn's kin seeks revenge, it's justice, not crime." Thorne shifted uneasily. "I served in those trenches, saw men broken. If this killer is a ghost of that era." Confessions tumbled forth like dominoes, Victor admitting to blackmailing Crow over shared war profiteering ties, Amelia revealing her own research into poisonous thorns inspired by family law, Evelyn confessing a hidden stash of Reginald's wartime medals, sold piecemeal to fund her escapes. But the revelations peaked in pandemonium. A sudden blackout plunged the parlor into abyss, the gas lamps snuffing as if by spectral breath. In the inky void, a scuffle erupted. A silken cord whipped through the air, looping around Victor's neck like a viper's strike. He gurgled, thrashing against invisible hands, the noose tightening with merciless intent. "Arrêtez!" Poirot bellowed, his voice cutting through the darkness. He lunged forward, guided by instinct and the faint glow of embers in the grate. His fingers found the cord, a fine silk scarf, scented with that elusive lily perfume, and severed it with a concealed pocket knife, honed for such contingencies. Victor collapsed, gasping, as Poirot relit a candle, its flame revealing the chaos, overturned chairs, scattered beads, and a fleeing shadow vanishing through a side panel. The killer had struck amid the séance, thwarted only by Poirot's foresight. "Close, but not victorious," he panted, helping Victor to his feet. The group huddled, breaths ragged, as guards, summoned by a yanked bell pull, flooded the room with lanterns. With the parlor secured, Poirot unraveled the threads under the restored light. The noose, Evelyn's scarf, but planted to implicate her. The blackout, a tampered fuse, accessible from Thorne's domain. Yet the pivotal clue emerged from the melee, a glint on the floor, a slender stiletto disguised as a decorative hairpin in Amelia's coiffure, its blade etched with faint blood residue. This weapon, Poirot held it aloft, concealed in plain sight amid your tresses, mademoiselle. Surgical steel, ideal for the throat slash, and the perfume. Yours, but borrowed by others to confuse. Amelia blanched. It's for protection. The estate is isolated. But Poirot shook his head. No, traces match the library scene. And the diary. You knew of Blackthorn. Your great uncle, betrayed. Vendetta fuels you, but greed twisted. The circle narrowed. Amelia and Thorn, their alibis frayed by the seance's truths. Her botanical poisons aligning with the tea attempt, his military knots matching the noose. Victor and Evelyn, while shadowed, bore motives less visceral. Guards at every shadow, Poirot commanded, posting sentinels as the group dispersed to fortified quarters. The chapter of the crypt closed with a tentative hush, the manor's pulse slowing to a wary rhythm. Yet beneath it all, the final confrontation simmered, a cauldron of revelations bubbling toward an inexorable boil, as Poirot's grey cells forged the last links in the chain of justice. Chapter 5. The unveiling of the sinister veil. The final evening at Eldridge Manor descended like a velvet curtain over a tragic opera, the sun dipping below the horizon in a blaze of crimson and gold, as if the sky itself mourned the revelations to come. The air within the grand salon hummed with anticipation, chandeliers overhead dripping crystal tears that refracted the firelight from the massive hearth. Hercule Poirot had transformed the room into a stage of judgment, arranging armchairs in a semicircle facing a podium improvised from a marble pedestal. Velvet ropes cordoned off the space, and guards stood sentinel at every exit, their uniforms starched shadows against the opulent wallpaper adorned with faded heraldic crests. The survivors filed in one by one, their faces etched with the wear of sleepless nights and gnawing suspicions. Victor entered first, his usual swagger subdued to a cautious stride, rubbing the faint bruise where the noose had bitten into his neck. Amelia followed, her emerald gown replaced by somber grey, clutching a sprig of wilted jasmine as if it were a talisman against the storm. Thorn, ever the dutiful butler, positioned himself near the sideboard, his eyes scanning the room with the vigilance of a cornered fox. Last came Lady Evelyn, a vision in mourning weeds, her veil partially lifted to reveal eyes rimmed with coal-smudged sorrow, moving with the grace of a queen, dethroned yet unbowed. Poirot stood at the podium, his compact form radiating an aura of unassailable certainty, his moustache waxed to precise curls that seemed to quiver with the electricity of impending triumph. In his hands, he held a sheaf of notes, the diary from the crypt, and a small ebony box that gleamed ominously under the lights. Mesdames et messieurs, he began, his voice a silken thread weaving through the tension. We gather not for lament, but for illumination. The sinister killer has danced among us, leaving thorns in our paths, but tonight the veil lifts. Sit and attend. The group complied, the rustle of fabrics and creak of leather the only sounds as they settled. Poirot's eyes swept over them, piercing as a surgeon's scalpel. We commence with the roses, those ebony harbingers of doom, not mere flowers, non, symbols potent and personal, black roses rare as forbidden love, thorns sharp as betrayal. From whence do they come? Not the gardens here, as Mademoiselle Amelia attested, but imported from a shadowy nursery in Paris, tied to wartime shipments, and the diary, The diary unveils the root. He opened the leather tome, pages crackling like dry bones. Lord Harrington's espionage was no noble pursuit. He betrayed Blackthorn, a comrade whose real name, Elias Duval, echoes in these entries. Duval perished not in battle, but abandoned in mud-choked trenches, his secret sold for Harrington's gain. But Duval had a sister, Elise, a love Harrington professed in stolen letters, only to discard when fortune beckoned elsewhere. Elise Duval, widowed young, vanished into obscurity. Or did she? Gasps rippled through the salon. Evelyn's hand fluttered to her throat, a gesture Poirot noted with a subtle nod. The perfume, that elusive lily essence, traced not to Amelia's vials, but to a bespoke blend from pre-war France favoured by Elise, and the stiletto, a hairpin disguise, yes, but engraved with initials, E.D., Elise Duval. Victor leaned forward, his voice hoarse. But Aunt Evelyn. Poirot raised a hand, silencing him. Patience, monsieur. Alibis crumble like autumn leaves under scrutiny. Timestamps overlooked. The grandfather clock in the hall, wound by Thorn at 10, yet his chimes during the reconstruction lagged by 5 minutes, a deliberate tampering to skew the murder hour. Who wound it nightly? Lady Evelyn, claiming headaches, but seen by a maid slipping downstairs. Amelia's eyes widen. The clock. But that means, oui, mademoiselle. It means the scream we heard was not at midnight but earlier, allowing the killer to orchestrate chaos from afar, and the poison in the tea, cyanide, concealed in a ring's hollow compartment. Evelyn's emerald bauble emptied now, but residue lingers. He produced the ring from the ebony box, holding it aloft like a trophy. Tested discreetly this morn, with chemicals from your greenhouse. Irrefutable. Evelyn's composure fractured, a tremor running through her frame, but she remained silent, her gaze locked on the flames. Thorn shifted uneasily. Sir, this implicates... All in due course, Poirot interjected. The noose in the seance. Silk from Evelyn's wardrobe, knots military grade, taught perhaps by Thorn, but executed with a woman's delicate precision. And Crow, the gardener, a pawn, paid with funds siphoned from Harrington's accounts, transfers traced to Evelyn's private ledger, forged in her hand. Victor exploded to his feet. Aunt Evelyn, the sinister killer, absurd, she suffered most. Poirot's moustache twitched with a hint of sympathy. Suffering breeds vengeance, monsieur. Elise Duval did not vanish. She reinvented. Marriage to Harrington was no coincidence, a calculated infiltration, years in the forging. The infidelity, Harrington's, yes, but also a cover for her simmering rage. Greed. She amassed his wealth through subtle manipulations, the forged will her masterpiece, but the diary's discovery threatened exposure. Hence, the acceleration, the murder, the taunts, the attempts to frame others. He turned to Evelyn, his voice softening, yet unyielding. Madame, the black roses symbolize your brother's betrayed loyalty, thorns for the pain Harrington inflicted. You are Elise Duval Harrington, the sinister killer, weaving a web of retribution across decades. The salon erupted. Amelia cried out, Aunt, Mother, no. Victor staggered back, face ashen. Thorn moved forward, but guards restrained him gently. Evelyn rose slowly, veil falling away to reveal a face transformed, not by grief, but by raw, unmasked fury melting into resignation. Clever, Monsieur Poirot, too clever. Her voice, once melodic, now carried the gravel of truth. Elise died in spirit when Reginald abandoned my brother to rot. I tracked him, seduced him, bore his heirs in a cage of lies. The roses, reminders of the love he feigned, black as his soul. I slashed his throat as he deserved. Quick, but agonizing in his final gaze of recognition. The others, distractions, to bury the trail. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not of remorse but release. Victor, Amelia, my children, forgive the deception. I sought justice for our bloodline, but greed poisoned me too. The vial. She withdrew a small glass vial from her bodice, stoppered with wax, its contents swirling lethally. My final thorn. Poirot stepped forward swiftly, seizing it before she could act. No more shadows, madame. Justice, not suicide. Guards encircled her as she collapsed into sobs, confessions pouring forth, the hidden letters blood-stained from Reginald's desk, detailing her brother's fate, the perfume as a signature scent of vengeance, the wartime ties that birthed the sinister moniker in underground circles. Amid gasps and tears, she was led away, her silhouette fading down the hall like a receding spectre. The salon fell into stunned hush. Victor embraced Amelia, their rivalry dissolved in shared orphanhood. Thorn, exonerated yet shaken, poured brandy with trembling hands. Poirot gathered his notes, the ebony box now a repository of evidence for the authorities arriving at dawn. As moonlight bathed the manor once more, Poirot stepped onto the gravel drive, his valise in hand. The fog had lifted, stars crisp overhead. The case is sealed, he murmured to the night, a quiet satisfaction warming him like fine cognac. Behind him, Eldridge Manor stood cleansed, its shadows banished, peace restored to its haunted halls. No lingering whispers, no open wounds. The sinister killer's reign ended, a tale concluded in the annals of mystery, eternally resolved.